Welcome to Fluorescene.
Welcome to Fluorescene Show number 8. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Glazier, and man, what a week in ODs on Facebook. It's the first week in almost a year where the number of COVID posts went down compared to our usual posts. We're back to talking about crazy patients, how much we hate vision plans, sharing compelling ocular disease images and cases. This has to mean that we're getting back to normal, especially the crazy patient part. This week in ODs on Facebook, a doc posts about things we've said to patients that we wish we could unsay. When it happens in the exam lane, it's especially embarrassing. A doc asked, what is the top 1 or 2 worst things you've ever said to a patient? Now this doc, like many, made the mistake of commenting on someone's appearance by asking if they had twins in there. Yikes, to which the patient responded, I'm not pregnant. Of course, we could see that one coming. Oof. Double burn. Not only is he implying she's so round she looks pregnant, he's implying she's so round there's no way there's only one baby in there. I'm sure that doc wanted to hide under a rock. But that said, I wonder how round she would be if she ever did carry twins. Needless to say, there were a ton of fun comments on this one. When a patient asked if she should close an eye to read the chart, a doc told her 2 eyes are better than 1. Meanwhile, her husband with a prosthetic eye was sitting right there in the exam room with them. Another yike moment. Another doc said, okay, we're finished. Now we can check your dad, to which the patient responded, that's my husband. Then there was the intern who told a diabetic with an eye patch and a wooden leg that he could play pirate for his visual field test. Awkward. Then there were those who mistook little people for children, those who mistook people's children for their spouses. Comments about hair to bald people, I especially feel the pain on that one. There was the doc who asked, how are you ladies today? To a mom and her son with long hair. And then the doc who asked the patient if her eyes bitch or earn. Or how about the doc who worked in an Indian reservation and said to a kid, hop up here on the big chair, chief. Face palm. Then there was the patient who said, I sat on my glasses and now I can't find them. Doc says, I think I know where they are. Regretfully, he responded. Then the doc who had a wheelchair patient with no legs who told him as he was leaving, if you want to come back for glasses, you can walk in anytime. Then caught himself and said, well, not walk in, but I guess roll in. And then, okay, doc, time to stop talking at that point. Then there were clinical errors, as in the doc who told the patient he had a well-circumcised lesion. A doc asked, why do some patients think an eye exam is a game, questioning their failure to willingly provide information on entrance forms, which we've all seen. It's common experience for us. At least it is in my office. This doc had a problem patient come in playing games right off the bat. We all know the type. She expected the doc to know everything about her immediately without providing any information on entrance forms or verbally. Near the end of the exam, she goes, did you notice anything unusual about my eyes? He replied, well, no, should I? And what ensued was a long pause with no further explanation before finally she revealed that she's been told she was a glaucoma suspect by another doc, but didn't put it on her form. Because you should just know. Can't you read my mind? In other news, she's on her 4th husband, and I don't need a mind reader to tell me that. Docs chimed in. Let's not forget the classic reporting of medical history just as you're about to walk them out of the exam lane. Pet peeve of mine. And those who don't tell you anything because they want you to figure everything out with no information. As a patient said, otherwise, you're cheating. Then those patients you spend extra time with to answer questions, and they ding you on social reviews for, you got it, not answering questions. And those who come in for a second opinion, but don't want to give you any additional information as they want to see what you come up with on your own. These people are short on the concept of second opinions. And then those who want to know which eye the freckle is in that the previous doctor they saw told them about. And there's no sign of a freckle anywhere. That's always an interesting moment. Either you're a bad doctor or the other doc is the bad doctor. Or when they deny having floaters, and at the end of the exam they ask, "Did you see any floaters?" Ugh. Then, the first-time patients who at the end of the exam ask, "Have my eyes changed yet?" They present with no glasses, no written RX from before, but want you to answer that question. "Sorry, but my ESP has been on the fritz lately." And finally, are you having any problems with your eyes or vision? Patient, that's your job, you tell me. A doc posted about a healthy 38-year-old emmetrope, first eye exam of her life, no symptoms, normal CT, MRI, echocardiogram. The doc posted these pics, noting she discussed possible ocular melanoma with the patient and referred out for extra testing. Follow-up consults started at a retinal specialist who diagnosed a suspected melanoma, then referred her to a regional ocular oncologist who also diagnosed it as a suspected melanoma and recommended plaque therapy nonetheless. But then she went and got a second opinion to the world's leading ocular oncologist who diagnosed a giant nevus, likely benign, and recommended observation. Docs commented, "The fact that it does not appear to invade the optic nerve demonstrates it's not a destructive lesion." Good point. And the poster included a link to a study, and the study summarized it was concluded that 18% of giant nevi transformed into melanoma and emphasized that the importance of lifelong monitoring. And great advice from the doctor who said this: "This is exactly why I never say melanoma in front of a patient until the ocular oncologist says it first." One member posted about a guy who came into his practice and learned the whole office got vaccinated. Great news, he said, but questioned, "How did you all get it? Are you considered healthcare workers?" The doc was amazed, as I am, and surprised by the question. And I don't blame him, but look, we can't blame the guy for not knowing we're in the healthcare field. After all, he booked an eye examination, presented insurance, came in and saw someone wearing a white coat. He saw expensive diagnostic equipment, techs in scrubs, clearly expected to get an examination and a prescription as a result of the visit, not to mention seeing the many degrees plastered on the walls, and the eye care sign outside was a giveaway. Nope, can't think any reason he would think we're doctors, can you? One member said to start over by telling the patient, "Let's try this again. Good morning, I'm Dr. Smith." One doc's chiropractor asked him how he qualified for vaccination. The chiropractor. And then there were the words of the wise. A doc added, "The problem is us. If you don't educate every patient about their health and vision risks, take either limited or no medical history, and then sell them a pair of glasses, then they'll perceive you as eyeglass retailers." People do not use their brains when they open their mouths. Forgive them, educate them, charge them double next time. I had a lady yesterday thank me profusely on her way in and back out the door with a medication RX for seeing her 2 hours after she called with a bilateral red painful eyes. Remind yourself of the good ones every time someone says something stupid, or, as one doc put it, play a game. Fill in the blank. You are currently at the eye. We've got a great show for you today. We interview optometric icon and legend Dr. Ed Bennett, named one of the 50 most influential optometrists of all time. Currently, executive director of the Gas Permeable Lens Institute, and previously an assistant dean at University of Missouri St. Louis College of Optometry for over 37 years. We have a new segment by glaucoma specialist Dr. Judy Hu called Who's Got Glaucoma, and an interview with Dr. George Goodman, an optometrist and owner of a brewery in Colorado, who shares his story about his side hustle and passion, brewing, and more. So stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to our channel for updates, and let's go. I'm here today with the famous icon Ed Bennett. Ed Bennett received his Doctor of Optometry degree from the Indiana University School of Optometry and his master's degree in educational psychology from the Indiana University School of Education. He retired after 37 years plus of service as assistant dean at the University of Missouri St. Louis College of Optometry in 2019.
Dr. Bennett has served as Executive Director of the GPLI Gas Perm Institute, the Educational Division of the Contact Lens Manufacturers Association, and Chair of the Contact Lens and Cornea Section Council of the AOA. He's a diplomat and past chair for the Cornea, Contact Lens, and Refractive Technology Section of the AAO. He's a fellow in the Scleral Lens Education Society and recently inducted as a distinguished fellow in the National Academies of Practice. He's authored over 200 publications, including 13 texts, lectured over 340 scientific education symposia. He's a recipient of the Achievement Award of the AOA Contact Lens Section, the Dr. Leonard Bronstein Memorial Award, and numerous other awards and accolades. Dr. Bennett was named one of the 50 most influential optometrists of all time in America by Optometric Management, and recently was honored as one of the 30 most influential in contact lenses in the last 30 years by Contact Lens Spectrum. He's the clinical feature editor for Contact Lens Spectrum, an editorial review board member for Review of Optometry and several other journals. His research interests primarily pertain to rigid gas permeable contact lenses, including scleral and multifocal lenses. So welcome, Dr. Bennett. There you are.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you. Appreciate that introduction.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Just wonderful. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Managing in the time of COVID. You look healthy, like I said. I'm happy to see that. I guess I want to launch into this by saying, you know, you're one of my most admired mentors, even from a distance, one of the most genuine people in the profession. And when I look back over your career to come up with interview questions, what struck me was the insane number of people you've influenced. Something like 1,000 students directly through the school, maybe more. Every single OD who graduated after 1985, who ever touched a contact lens through your writing and teaching, every single person who ever worked on the industry side through your involvement in the CLMA and other organizations, and apparently from what I saw in one of your interviews, everyone you ever came into contact with outside of optometry.
Well, that's very kind of you, Alan. My history is simply lucky breaks. You know, I've just had a series of very fortunate breaks. I'm anything that I've done on a positive nature is a victory for the normal, certainly the common man, I guess.
The regular guy. You're a regular guy. You're modest too. Well, let's dig into where you spent most of your career. Tell us about your tenure at UMSL and how you ended up in education.
Interestingly, like most people in education, that wasn't my plan at all. I was, very fortunate to get an optometry school. I was coming in at a time where it was very difficult to get into optometry school. I had very average academic credentials. I majored in psychology and minored in fraternity, so that hurt me. And so ultimately, through a series of lucky breaks, I literally 2 weeks before optometry school began, I got an optometry school. So then I'm a third year doing very average, as you would expect, and still wondering what my passion was. My dad wanted me to go into his beer business. I love beer, but not the business side of it. So still wondering what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I was in the Contact Lens 1 lecture about hard lens design. And it was an aha moment. Bells went off. And I really want to do contact lenses. And they were just opening a contact lens research rotation at Indiana University. And so I thought, that's perfect for me. Dr. Borish was in charge of it. And I said, I want to do this. And the director of externships goes, Ed, you got to be in the top 20% of your class. And he didn't say I needed a telescope to see those people, but basically that's what it was. But he knew, he was the Contact Lens 1 professor also, so he knew how interested I was, and he bumped somebody and put me in that rotation. And in that rotation, I got to do clinical investigations on the 2 first extended wear lenses, the first soft toric, the CSI lens, and the first gas permeable, the Polycon lens. And what's really kind of odd about that whole situation is everybody would think the Polycon lens would be the one that just changed my life. Well, actually, it was the soft toric lens. It was, other than edema, poor vision, and discomfort, it was a good lens. In other words, most everybody failed. But I had three outstanding benefits from doing that study. I got to do research all year, and I got paid by that company, which was Wesley Jessen. So my fourth year tuition was paid by a soft lens company. And then the second benefit was the contact at Wesley Jessen I worked with was Alan Tomlinson. And that was the beginning of a lifelong friendship. And he was my research mentor. I got to go to Glasgow, Scotland when he was dean there and do an acanthamoeba study. So what a blessing for me. The third is there was a second year student who was one of my subjects who ultimately failed in that study. I thought she was pretty nice, so I ended up marrying her. And she has a private practice in a suburb of St. Louis right now. So that was all very good.
So I read a quote of yours that I absolutely loved. It said, I think Art Epstein was interviewing you. He said, an instructor is never supposed to get too close to students, but I have never followed that principle. Why?
I think what happens is, and this was particularly true at UMSL when I went into the position of being essentially dean of students. So I'm the person admitting people. And when you admit people, you get close to them and you know them well. And then, as a lot of people who are in education understand, and we have an outstanding faculty now at UMSL, you do get close to them. And if they're struggling, a lot of times they'll come to your office and you'll talk to them. And yes, technically you're not supposed to get close to them. You're not supposed to let that influence them. But the fact that they feel they can approach you and they can be close to you, I think is fine. You're still going to grade them objectively, hopefully. And then, boy, afterwards, how many friends do I have today that are graduates from UMSL and from Indiana? I've been really blessed.
Yeah, it takes a kind of person or two of the same kind of people to connect like that. I remember people at my school, professors who I had an affinity for, and those you didn't. You seem to have an across-the-board affinity for a lot of people, and I think probably some of that has to do with some of the creative ways that you share knowledge. Tell our viewers about some of them.
Well, I think when I've been fortunate, I'm not a person who really has grasped technology as well as other people have, but a couple of ways I've really tried to get through the students, and just break up the lecture part. One would be, is like a lot of people, I use the Socratic method, or I shouldn't say Socratic method, but the cell phone response system for, in my lectures, and break the class into teams, and then the winning team would get a trip to an nice industry function, and so we do that all year. The other thing I would do is I would make a lot of videos. I dressed up as women. I dressed up as, oh my gosh, Leonardo da Vinci for the history lecture. And then I would pre-record that, and then I would interview, Leonardo in class. Or I had one called the Doe Family, where in all the Does, I dressed up as three of them. And one of life's great ironies is, this was like 10 years ago. I do it every year, but John Doe was a guy that, I wore the wig, and he would fire people, and he was firing me as my optometrist when I interviewed him for the students. And I was dressed up as Donald Trump, long before he went on to other things, but just, dressed up at women, just, anything to break up the lectures. And I enjoyed that.
That's great. I was hoping, I didn't want to ask you about that. I'm glad you threw that in there. I heard about that. Are there any photos? That's really what we want to know out there. There have
Well, I'll tell you.
If you have any photos of Ed in dresses, please get them to me so I can make sure to get them on the show or up on Facebook. I'm sure everybody wants to see that. That's great. You have almost an interest in the theater, in the theatrics, and that's been part of it too. That's great. Well, Art Epstein called you the profession's greatest advocate for contact lenses. And my next question, I think you already answered it. You said you were in a class and you were learning about contact lenses, and that's where it clicked for you. Was there anything else?
Well, I really was, when I was looking at, again, the lucky breaks, getting in that research rotation, Then I go to UMSL, and I get the idea that I was doing some lectures with Bob Grohe, and this was back probably in the early 80s. And Bob ends up, of course, being a lifelong friend. And I came up with this idea. I said, I think we need to have a book on contact lenses. I think on gas permeables. They were in their infancy, but I thought this is a good idea. Talked Bob into it, submitted a proposal to all the publishers, got rejected by everybody. One of them, I still have the letter. It goes, well, we don't think it's a good topic. And who's ever heard of Ed Bennett? So, that drove me into thinking about counseling. But I thought, this is a good topic. Well, then I called up, my mentor, Dr. Irvin Borish, and I asked him, Dr. Borish, will you be willing to write a chapter on bifocal gas perms? And he goes, of course, Ed. And so I got his name on the proposal, submitted it to his publisher. Clinical Refraction was the biggest selling book in optometry, and it got accepted. And thanks to him, my career took off with that book. And oddly enough, Alan, years later, I was in a position where I was lecturing with Dr. Borish at a function at Indiana University, and he was in his 90s, and he got up and lectured, and he was typical. And so then I followed him, and he's sitting in the front row, and I told that story, and he's just beaming. 5 minutes into my lecture, I hear the snoring in the front row. Put him to sleep.
Just like his books put us to sleep. No, but seriously, that's a heavy hitter right there. I mean, he's the Borish. I mean, he's the father of optometry, pretty much. I think they've called him. So wow, that's really heavy hitter name. I don't know if I can't one up you on that one. So let's go back in time, and a lot of people. Most of the viewers here haven't ever fit a PMMA, and many of them have never fit an RGP other than in clinic. Take the viewers back to the days where PMMAs went from being the only choice in rigid lenses and the disruption that RGP lenses brought to that market.
Yeah, excellent question, Alan. It was interesting when I was starting off. Obviously, PMMA was not only the rigid lens of choice, but really the lens of choice. Soft lenses were in their infancy. And we all know PMMA lenses, and I was a PMMA wearer, caused edema. So it really was noticeable when you take your lenses off, you couldn't see out of spectacles because of the edema. So when we're in that position, and then the early GP lenses like Polycon and Paraperm and these, being involved with those, in fact, I remember giving a presentation at the Academy, probably about 83, with over 200 refits from PMMA to GPs. And it just was wonderful to see the fact that the edema went away, these people could see out of their glasses. It was the easiest refits in history. I know there are patients who might have had a little bit more sensitivity because they were going into an oxygen breathing material, but overall it was wonderful, and it really spearheaded for me what my interest was going to be. I was a rigid lens wearer. I loved the early studies with Alan Tomlinson, looking at refitting, and then taking that steps forward into looking at lens design, looking at comfort. How can we optimize comfort? And some of the studies we did, really, I did a lot with lens design and didn't find much, that really helped. Maybe going bigger, but this was long before sclerals. But actually, how you presented GPs, the use of a topical anesthetic, the empirical fitting seemed to be, if you provided them with lenses in their vision, it's amazing how they think more about their quality of vision than they do about the awareness. So that was a big part, and of course, ultimately into looking at multifocals, looking at sclerals, and orthokeratology and the other areas. But yeah, it all started with PMMA and being able to have the experience to fit rigid lenses and to be able to see the benefits once they went from a PMMA into a GP.
That was, well, so my career has spanned 1993 when I graduated till now, and one of the biggest challenges in optometry for me was convincing people to go out of their PMMA lenses, as I'm sure almost everyone who can relate will tell you. It was they they didn't feel those in their eyes because they killed the nerves and they were numb. And then they started to get the nerves back and they didn't like the way their gas perms felt. It was a nightmare trying to tell them, yes, this is better for you. So I totally relate to that. I want to move back to UMSL now, because there are two things there I know you're there are many things you're particularly proud of, but I want to talk about two of them that I know you're particularly proud of. You formed the residency program. Tell us about that and the challenges with that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had gone to the dean to say I'd love to have a residency program, and he goes, "Well, we really don't have the funding." And I said, "Well, I'll pay for half of it out of our research funds." And because of that, and I had an interested student, she had done a rigid extended wear study for me over the previous 2 years, Vanita Henry, and lo and behold, we got it approved. We got Vanita in. Today, one of my closest friends, I always say when I think of her, I count my blessings twice. And she joined the faculty. Ultimately, that resulted in, 5 textbooks and counting, but in a lot of clinical studies. So right away, that told me that, we're really off to a good start. Rex Gormley was my clinical mentor, and he owned a private practice in St. Louis, which many years ago was bought by David Seibel, and David's a good friend. But Rex said, "What do you want this residency to do?" And I go, "I don't know. What do you think?" And he goes, "Do you want it to gear people toward private practice, toward industry, toward education?" And I said, "Well, I hope it does all three, emphasizing the clinical aspects, and we are flexible enough that they can go whichever direction they want to." And my second resident was Larry Davis. He's my dean now. He was a clinical investigator for the CLEC study. My third is Bruce Morgan. Bruce, head of contact lenses at MCO for many years. Even in recent years, 3 of my closest friends are residents we've had in the last 10 years. We've had Matt Kaufman, who's in charge of contact lenses at Houston, had Carl Kramer, who's now a contact lens faculty member at UMSL, and Stephanie Wu. And I don't have to say anything about her. She's gone viral. But I have been really blessed by that program. And anybody else who's been involved with residency programs will tell you the same thing, that these are the people that really help make dreams come true. They are people that we are in a position to establish lifetime friendships with.
That's great. That sounds like that's definitely not a motley crew. There's some big names in there as well. I recognize a lot of them. The other thing that I know you're particularly proud of, because when I came there to lecture a couple of years ago, you took me on a tour, was your new patient care center, which I don't know if it's that new anymore, but wow. What was your role in that? And that was a dream of yours since when? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, Alan, I came there in 1982, and the chancellor said, "We're going to have a new building soon." And, I should ask him when is soon. And when Larry Davis became dean about 20 years ago, obviously that was a mission of his, and it just wasn't easy. There was just so much turnover in Missouri and the University of Missouri system, and we just couldn't get to be number one on the list for a new building. And how we got a new building was really an innovative plan of Larry's, and it was a scaled back version. It was, instead of having to combine nursing and optometry, we really just emphasize having a building just for optometry, and then go out and get funding. He saved some money. My role in the whole process was I proposed an alumni fundraising campaign to pay for the equipment, and that went really well. I was really proud of our alumni and how they supported that. And then Vanita Henry was the other piece of the puzzle, because she was our clinic director, and she helped in the design of the building, and really was able to efficiently end up with a building that's just beautiful. It's to me, I think it's the primary building on campus, the crown jewel. Oh. And we're so proud of it. And just for me, in my last several years, to see the great faculty that we hired, we have the best faculty we've ever had. And then to see that building come up, I could go away feeling, very good about things.
It's gorgeous, and it overlooks the baseball field, which is definitely not a negative for you. I know you're passionate about baseball, and music. And we've talked a lot about baseball, but we haven't talked music. I read something about your favorite band, the 70s and 80s legend Hall & Oates, who have, by the way, what a discography. I mean, song after song after song you know and you love from them. Tell our viewers about your connection to the band, and you got something on your retirement from guitarist John Oates. What is that?
Well, I tell you, it's so funny. So fast forward, I guess, about maybe a year and a half ago, my wife and I are in Florida, and when I transitioned from UMSL, and I still teach there, and in fact, I enjoy teaching more today than I ever have, but I was retiring as a full-time faculty member. Well, I got lucky, and after I'd made my decision to retire like a year before, and when I actually did it, UMSL had come up with a buyout. So, my wife and I were laughing. We'd made the decision to retire, and now we're going to get paid for it. So we used that money toward a house in Florida. And we were signing on the dotted line the day this video comes on my phone. And it's a happy retirement video from John Oates. And I'm like, wow. So I like to tell people that buying a new house or signing on a new house wasn't my number one moment of excitement that day. It was getting a video from John Oates. So they put it into, when they put together a retirement video for me for my retirement ceremony, they put it in there. And to give credit where credit's due, and I hope I'm not breaking too many privacy laws, but it came from Jeff Sonsino, and Jeff sees a lot of famous people in his practice in Nashville, and I can never thank Jeff enough for sending me that video. And it's like, I have to watch it about once a month, just to really remind myself how wonderful it is.
Oh, that's awesome. Great story. All right. Well, we're getting towards the end. I just wanted to tell you that everybody was sad that you retired, but retirement is the next phase, and retirement though means different things to different people, and your definition doesn't really sound like the standard type of retirement. You said you'll still be teaching, you'll still be involved in the GPLI on the spectrum with the Specialty Lens Symposium. And what do you view retirement as?
Well, I think retirement again is a transition. And I think a lot of people feel the same way, like a Craig Norman, for example, and people that, well, not really retired, transitioning into just a little bit of the lesser responsibility. I'm glad not to have responsibilities of grading students and grading papers and all that. I really just enjoy the teaching aspects and still get to do some of that. My biggest purpose, the greatest blessing in my life professionally, is the GPLI. And obviously I'm devoting more time to the GPLI today than I used to. I mean, it's a story I've told a million times, but the GPLI started in the mid-1980s, and the first executive director had to step down because he had a conflict of interest. So I was in Berkeley filming the first fluorescene pattern videos we did for GPLI, and it was with Dr. Bob Mandel and with Carl Moore. So what a thrill that was for me. And Carl was this Contact Lens Manufacturers Association president. So he's taken me to the airport, and he said, Ed, I want you to be executive director of the GPLI. And I told Carl, I said, no, I don't really think I can do that. And the truth was, I thought it was too great a responsibility for me to handle. This is about 1987, I think. And he goes, you'll understand, Ed, if you don't accept, I'm going to drop you off on the highway and you're going to have to walk to the airport. So I said yes, and it was the greatest decision I've ever made. We've had so much fun developing programs and resources for practitioners, for students. We have an annual residence program. It's a 3-day workshop. We're real excited about what we have coming up in 2021. We're working on a development or fundraising campaign. We think there's a lot of potential to expand our workshop programs for students, have a student membership, a practitioner membership. My favorite module that we're working on this year, which this isn't going to be the final title, but the working title is, oh my God, I got a GP wear in my chair. What do I do? For all the novice people out there. So we're gonna have a lot of fun, and it's gonna start with reaching out to our friends in industry, to our eye care practitioners, even to patients who have benefited from GP lenses. Have the opportunity to help support us, and then we're going to be able to do more. So I do plan on hopefully staying with GPLI for a while. I really feel it's wonderful to be associated with Roger Zimmer and Jason Nichols and the Contact Lens Spectrum team.
Good people.
I hope to continue doing that. GSLS is a wonderful meeting. I've been blessed to be with it since its inception. I'm sure I'm due or overdue to rotate off of that, but I'm really proud of what GSLS has meant to specialty contact lens education. So when it's all said and done, Alan, just as we're so appreciative of what you've meant to all of us with ODs on Facebook, with Fluorescene, with everything. I mean, you're one of the the people my wife even many times has commented on your impact. I feel like I've just been very, very blessed in my life, and I don't want to slow down yet. And I'm excited about the future. And I think we're in a position where specialty contact lenses are going to play a greater and greater role.
That's great. You brought your wife into the picture. I know you touched on her. You told us about how you met. How many years have you been married?
Boy, 38. I'm sitting here thinking, ooh, no, don't ask me a question I can't. No, it's been 38.
Oh, that's the tough question. You're screwed if she sees this.
What? We started dating. She was still a student. I was on the faculty at IU. I think they behead you for that today.
Dog.
But, I always make the joke that I gave her an A in clinic, and she always responds, "I don't remember that." But I've been very blessed. She's probably the best optometrist I know. I think of people like her and Tom Quinn. How blessed was I with Tom, and the leaders that I've had the opportunity, and that's what I'm doing now today, Alan, is I transitioned from 20 years in the academy leadership and then into the AOA Council, and right as I was transitioning off as chair of the AOA Council, the academy came to me to be in charge of their leadership and legacy pillar, which is one of the 5 pillars of their strategic plan. And now that's morphed into being in charge of the leadership task force. So working on an entire program online, as well as lectures at the academy. People who complete this entire module will be recognized at the academy, and they'll be the people we'll come to first when we're thinking about new leaders within the academy and within the profession. And I really feel like I've embraced this, and how many great role models have I had to observe over the years? With the academy leadership, Carla Zadnik, Stan Yamani, Joe Barr, Glenda Secor. So we've really been blessed as a profession, and I benefit from these people every day, just as we all benefit from everything that you do.
Oh, thank you. It's really kind of you. Coming from you, it means a lot. But again, I'm modest too, so we're not going to talk about me anymore. We do want to hear, for wrapping it up, I want to hear about, was Matt, Josh, and Emily? Who are they?
You've done your homework. Yeah, I've really been thankful. We had a little scare last few weeks. Emily's a COVID nurse, and she finally got it.
These are your children, by the way. Just, we want to say that. Sorry.
Yeah. And she came out of quarantine yesterday, so she's back to work tonight. And the boys are, Matt is an engineer, and he's somebody who has embraced. He started in optometry, ended up in engineering, and proud of him. Josh is kind of my, he's I don't know how to describe Josh. He's in Colorado, which is the perfect state for him. He's a musician, has a great band. They've had an EP. They've got a lot of songs they're releasing on all the modalities recently. He's a soccer player, played in college, plays competitively today, and Josh is 30, I guess. And then on the side, he's a patent attorney associated with the University of Colorado.
Oh, on the side.
So he has a degree in engineering and law, and he's a patent attorney at FCU. But boy, he's he's hiking and skiing, and he's gonna drag Matt and I out to do a lot of hiking at Zion and Grand Canyon in April. So it's I've been blessed. Gene and I have been blessed in that regard as well. And thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's the life out there in Colorado. I just got back from Breckenridge, and every time I go to Colorado, Aspen, Breckenridge, Vale, something in me makes me want to stay. So it's beautiful out there. Visit him a lot. Well, anyhow,
Yes.
I want to wrap this up now, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to be here again. I'm just so excited to get a chance to interview you and just reconnect with you. With COVID and everything, we used to connect regularly at meetings, so hopefully that will start happening again in the next few months. And in the meantime, I want you to stay safe, and please pass along my regards to the missus, and let's not be such strangers anymore.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all you do.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Take care.
Hello and welcome to Fluorescene News, Episode 8. In retinal disease news, the European Commission has granted Ocugen's gene therapy candidate OCU400 an orphan medicinal product designation for the treatment of the inherited retinal diseases retinitis pigmentosa and Leber congenital amaurosis. It consists of a functional copy of the nuclear hormone receptor gene and is delivered to target cells in the retina using an adeno-associated viral vector. Delivering a functional copy of a gene directly into target cells within the retina could help restart retinal homeostasis, stabilizing cells and potentially rescuing photoreceptors from degeneration. In retinal vascular news, scientists explored a possible correlation between retinal vein occlusion and obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea was related with an increased incidence of retinal vein occlusion. Besides, obstructive sleep apnea would lead to increased oxidative and inflammatory biomarkers concentrations in the retinal vein occlusion cases. Obstructive sleep apnea could be used as a harmful prognostic factor of visual activity improvement. These findings highlighted the role of obstructive sleep apnea in the development of retinal vein occlusion. In other retinal news, cystoid macular edema due to Irvine gas syndrome is one of the common causes of painless visual impairment post-cataract extraction. The treatment of recurrent cases remains unstandardized. Researchers evaluated the effectiveness and safety of Fluocinolone acetonide intravitreal implant, also called Iluvien, in the off-label treatment of recurrent CME due to Irvine gas syndrome. They report improved functional and anatomical outcomes after treatment with Iluvien, indicating its use as a therapeutic alternative in recurrent cases of cystoid macular edema due to Irvine gas syndrome. Additionally, in eyes with suboptimal response to intravitreal therapies, Iluvien implant may provide longer recurrence-free periods with reduced treatment burden. In glaucoma news, researchers found that poorly fitted face masks can cause visual field artifacts that may be misinterpreted during standard automated perimetry as glaucoma progression or low test reliability. To investigate the impacts of face mask use on standard automated perimetry, Bayram and colleagues evaluated 127 patients with glaucoma. Among those, 101 wore ear loop surgical face masks, and 26 patients wore ear loop cloth face masks with no nose wires. The face mask-related low reliabilities only increase the workload and primarily cause fixation losses and false positives. In corneal news, the production, preparation, and use of bacterial nanocellulose as corneal bandages could be the key to help delicate stem cells to migrate to the cornea and heal the eye from a range of ocular disorders. Currently, limbal stem cells transplanted to the area could heal the cornea, but limbal stem cells are very delicate and getting them to take is challenging. To ensure efficient transplantation, an appropriate substrate is required to affix the limbal stem cells to the cornea. A very specific combination of properties have to be achieved for a successful transplant. Researchers from the Nanoparticles and Nanocomposites group at the Institute of Material Science of Barcelona have published an article on the production and characterization of bacterial nanocellulose to be used as a bandage to secure limbal stem cells to the cornea. The study focuses on the use of limbal stem cells derived from human embryonic stem cells. Bacterial nanocellulose is just one of the many options being studied for this application. Other natural polymers such as collagen, fibrin, or high hyaluronic acid are also being researched as potential substrates. Even synthetic substrates made by electrospinning seem promising. However, bacterial nanocellulose has many properties that make it a better candidate for ocular surface bandaging, such as thermal stability, which allows not only sterilization at high temperature, but also cryopreservation in nitrogen tanks. Besides, the production process is quite simple, and there's no need to use hazardous chemicals or to do any synthesis step. Another advantage of bacterial nanocellulose is that it can be shaped to any format and functionalized by many different routes. In other corneal news, Goodman Corporation announced that U.S. Phase 3 pivotal trial results for its next-generation corneal cross-linking iLink therapy for the treatment of keratoconus, known as Epi-on, met the study's primary efficacy endpoint, demonstrating a statistically significant improvement in maximum corneal curvature at 6 months from baseline between the treated and the placebo-controlled arms, and the ability to halt or reduce the progression of keratoconus in this placebo-controlled study. In alcohol news, or cataract news, depending on whether you're more interested in alcohol or cataract, researchers examine the association of alcohol consumption and type of alcoholic beverage with incident cataract surgery in 2 large cohorts. Their findings suggest a lower risk of undergoing cataract surgery with low to moderate alcohol consumption. The association was particularly apparent with wine consumption. We can't exclude the possibility of residual confounding, and further studies are required to determine whether this association is causal in nature or not. And that's the news for today. Stand by for more of the Fluorescene Show.
Today I'll be discussing a case that many of us have probably encountered. A patient presents with myopic discs and suspicious-looking optic nerves. This is a case of a 50-year-old African-American female who was referred for glaucoma evaluation. This patient had been referred after a routine eye exam with their primary eye care provider and was referred because of the suspicious cut in each eye. The patient had denied any history of ocular trauma and denied any history of ocular surgery. The patient reported that she was in good general health. Her only medical condition was Raynaud's phenomenon. This patient did report a positive family history of glaucoma, with her mother having the diagnosis. The visual acuities were measured to be 20/40 in the right eye and 20/30 in the left eye. This was with her spectacle RX. Pinhole did improve vision by 1 line in each eye. The spectacle RX was measured to be -18 in the right eye and -14 in the left eye. IOPs are measured to be 16 OU with Goodman tonometry. Pachymetry revealed pretty thin central corneal thicknesses, about 500 microns in each eye. Gonioscopy revealed deep angles. The angles were open to ciliary body, 360 OU. This is the visual field that this patient took. As you can see here, the indices are pretty reliable on each eye, and both eyes show an inferior defect, possible inferior arcular defect, especially over here on the left eye. The optic nerve head OCT here, I'll have you look at while I'm going over my optic nerve head assessment. So for the right eye, I graded the cupping at 0.6 and I noticed some superior thinning. I also noted temporal peripapillary atrophy and a tilted myopic disc consistent with her glasses prescription. Over here on the left eye, I did grade the cupping a little bit bigger at 0.7 and I noticed superior thinning and inferior thinning. This eye also had the same temporal peripapillary atrophy and a tilted myopic disc. At the bottom of the page here, you can see for the right eye, All the values are in the normal range, the retinal nerve fiber layer values. The left eye, some superior thinning being flagged here. At this point, I diagnosed this patient with normal tension glaucoma, mild to moderate OU. And I had discussed treatment options of topical therapy versus selective laser trabeculoplasty with her. We discussed the risks and benefits, and she had elected to proceed with SLT. At this point, I set the patient's target pressures at 12 OU, which was a 25% reduction from her baseline IOPs of 16 OU. This patient did very well with the laser procedure. After the laser, the right eye achieves a target pressure of 12, and the left eye had a pressure of 13, very close to the target pressure. This patient has been seen about every 4 months since the initial evaluation, and her visual fields and OCTs have been stable. Her optic nerve head evaluation has also been stable. Her IOPs have remained at or below her target pressure of 12 at each subsequent visit. Cases like this present a diagnostic challenge for the doctor because the patient's presenting with normal tensive IOPs. The myopic looking discs also makes it more difficult to assess the cupping. In cases like this, it's very important to get a dilated fundus exam so you have a full stereoscopic view. And it's important to look at the superior and inferior rims. That's the areas that are the most vulnerable to damage in glaucoma. It's important to look for any rim thinning superiorly and inferiorly, and also any notching or saucering of the rim. In normal tension glaucoma, disc hemes are also more prevalent compared to in primary open-angle glaucoma. So you also want to be on the lookout for any disc hemes as well. It's important to also correlate your clinical exam with the diagnostic testing. For example, in this case, the visual fields show inferior defects in each eye, which correlated with the superior rim thinning on the optic nerve in each eye. The OCT of the left eye also shows some superior temporal thinning, which was consistent with the optic nerve head exam and the visual field. In addition, you also want to look at all the risk factors. This patient had multiple risk factors for glaucoma. She reported a family history of glaucoma, an immediate family member, which increases her risk of developing glaucoma as well. She had very thin central corneas. We know from the ocular hypertension treatment study that it's an independent risk factor, since CCT is an independent risk factor for developing glaucoma. In addition, the patient reported a history of Raynaud's, and that is a risk factor for normal tension glaucoma as well. Other risk factors for normal tension glaucoma include a history of headaches or migraines, history of sleep apnea, and history of anemia. This patient's high myopia itself was also another risk factor for glaucoma, and the patient's race, being African American, was another risk factor she had. So with all these things in mind, even if patients present with normal tensive eye pressures and suspicious looking optic nerves, it's important to look carefully to see if the disc is just tilted and scary looking due to the high myopia, or if it actually has cupping due to glaucoma. I hope that this was helpful. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm here tonight with Dr. George Goodman. Dr. Goodman is an Oklahoma native and a third-generation OD. Dr. Goodman graduated from NSU College of Optometry in Oklahoma in 1994. He currently serves as Director of Cataract and Refractive Services, Eye Care Associates of South Tulsa. Prior to that, he was a private practice owner, clinical director of TLC Laser Eye Centers in Oklahoma City, Chicago, and Denver. He served as Senior Manager of Clinical Affairs for the Refocus Group. There's very little you haven't done, Dr. Goodman. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry. He serves as Vice President of the OCCRS. He's authored 4 books and numerous journal articles. He's also an adjunct faculty member at NSU College of Optometry in Oklahoma. Now, that's all fine and dandy for an optometry show, but tonight we have him here to learn about beer. Yes, you heard that right. We're here for the beer. George is not only an OD, but a master brewer and founder of Burly Brewing Company in Castle Rock, Colorado. That's just outside of Denver for anybody who gets thirsty by the end of this and wants to head over there and support his business. He had a dream to open his own brewery, and in 2017, he took the first steps to seeing his dream come true. He himself was an award-winning home brewer. We're going to hear about that tonight. He's hands-on in creating beer recipes at the brewery. Burly Brewing is 24 taps of Burly brewed crafts. That sounds like a manly name there. TVs, a patio, and a private room for whatever Burly event you might want to throw. And you won't go hungry because there's always a food truck right outside. So welcome, Dr. Goodman.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. I wanted this show to be about not just optometry, but optometrists. And I like people to get to know them, get to know about the kind of people they are, what their interests are. And when I saw your post that you were both an OD and owned a brewery, well, I mean, that met all the goals. What did pouring that first beer on the opening of your new business, what did it feel like?
Pretty freaking great. I will just tell you, we had a friends and family night on, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember. I need to think about it. But we had friends and family. So just the people that were important to me were there. And it was just like I told everyone, look, please be respectful. Because I've been marketing it on Facebook and Instagram and had built a following of almost 4,000 people before we even opened. So, I mean, when we hit the ground, we hit it running because we had a huge fan base from people that were excited because our marketing had been on point. We were selling merch in advance of our grand opening. So the buzz was there and it was palpable. But we did a friends and family night, and then we did a soft opening for 3 days. So crew could just figure out the processes, everything. And then on Saturday night, we had our grand opening, and it was huge. And I mean, I don't think any of the other breweries in town saw us coming. I think they were actually surprised when we just had such success right out of the gate. And having 24 taps wasn't something that made us very competitive, because I don't serve other people's beer. We serve our beer. We don't want anyone else's beer on tap. No offense to anyone else, but that's the whole reason we open a craft brewery. It's our recipes, and it constantly rotates. I haven't really gotten on board with the flagship beer idea, because to me, there's certain beers that I think, we should probably make this a flagship. We should probably stick with this. But I think people love the fact that it's always different. Every time you walk in the door, you never know what's going to be there. And if you have an adventurous spirit about craft beer, you're always going to have something new. Yeah, and you can see on the right side of the bar, we've got our Girly logo. And on the right side of the bar, we have our Burly logo. And Girly was born out of the need to have something door. I knew we had Burly to go on the men's bathroom, but then on the women's, I'm like, I don't know. So we played with it. We turned the beard upside down and made it a beehive, and then took the mustache and made it bangs, and then changed out the sunglasses for like a breakfast at Tiffany's kind of look.
You go back.
And that picture you just showed was when we were repainting. So the signs were taken down, but they're back up now.
Now, is it any coincidence that your icons there wear sunglasses? Any tie into optometry?
Well, I love that it does tie into optometry. I've had numerous of my friends say that. And actually what you're holding up right there was the reason why you and I are even having this conversation. Yeah. This customer, Steve, made that tap handle for me as a surprise, put my initials on the handle and put an eye chart on the top. And that's when I thought about posting it to your page. So
that's amazing post. I think you got like 1,000 likes and comments. It was huge. A lot of beer lovers out there. I'm one of them, definitely. You have some live music in there too that comes and plays. Really, really great. I'm gonna throw up some more images. As you can see, I pulled some pictures here. Here's some of the craft beer right there. I had a question that I was curious about. As I was looking through pictures, I saw one picture with those huge steel-looking vats that you see in microbreweries. They look so high maintenance. Like it's almost like a phoropter with all the dials and valves and everything. And something like just one wrong move, it looks like one wrong valve turn or button push, and could become a huge problem. Can you tell us about brewing large volumes of beer and any sad stories of beer gone wrong?
Thankfully, because of having really talented brewers on staff full time, I think we've dumped maybe 2 batches ever. I mean, if you keep your sanitation, you have a solid recipe, and you've got a brewer like we do that has, I believe it's 26 years experience, you just don't end up having to throw much out.
I'm a single malt Scotch and occasionally a bourbon guy, both which are barrel-aged whiskeys. And now I hear about a new trend in beer, barrel-aged beers. What does this old whiskey lover need to know about barrel-aged beers?
Well, the sky is the limit there. You can do some incredible things. One of the first things that you learn when you make beers, it takes, 14 to 17 days to make an ale, and it basically takes 28 to 31 days to make a lager. And it's because a lager ferments at a lower temperature and an ale ferments at a higher temperature, so it converts sugars faster. And those two styles are totally different. Now, whatever it is that goes in the barrel can go in whatever type of barrel you want. It could be a bourbon or whiskey barrel. It could be a port wine barrel. It could be Chardonnay barrel. It could be tequila barrel. And so it's really interesting, some of the flavors that you can impart into a beer just by putting in contact with the wood and the spirits that are in that wood. And I literally just had a conversation with Lisa today about the fact that we need to be brewing our stouts now that we serve next year. So it's an investment in something that just sits in a barrel, and you don't recuperate any of that expense until it comes time to serve it. But when it comes time to serve it, it's wow, because it's sat in these barrels and matured and gained the complexity that you're not going to get without using a barrel.
Fantastic. So almost exactly the same reason that they put whiskey in bourbon casks to get the sugars and the sweetness out. I'm just glad I have a refrigerator full of different beers upstairs, because now when this interview's over, I'm going to run up and sip on them. I think it's been a while. That's great. Very interesting. It's great that you show that again. Show us the beer again and show us the logo, because we're gonna be wrapping it up soon. But I want to roll into some things about some of the awesome merch you have. This is some of the glasses, this colorful, almost
we call those silly, and they are unbreakable. They can be frozen and they can be heated up to 450 degrees. Ooh. And they don't impart a silicone-like flavor. So they're incredible because they're indestructible.
We'll be doing a lot of freezing of those, I imagine, if it was me, but no heating. And then you have some great hats. Look at that. Again,
that's our Burly logo.
Sunglass logo has nothing to do with optometry. We've established that. And then I've got another one here. I don't know why it's not coming up. Give me a second here. It's a really nice sweatshirt. Should pop up any second.
Well, I will tell you, our brewery is very unique when it comes to merch. I don't know other brewery statistics on merch sales, but everybody I've talked to, when I tell them what our merch sales are, they look at me like we're just insane. Like, how in the hell do you sell that much merch? And all I can say is I'm pretty partial to our logo, and there's a story there that we should cover. The story is the name, first of all, came about. My boys and I were leaving Denver and driving down towards Pueblo to go dirt bike riding. And the goal that day, besides riding dirt bikes and hanging out as a family, was we're going to name this brewery. So we were still in the planning stages, and we were just spitballing. Some of the dumbest names went back and forth, and we're laughing. And I just blurted out Burly, and there was this silence. And then my boys are like, oh my God, that's so cool. They just loved it. So, I mean, the minute it came out of my mouth, it just had this resonance. And then the idea is we're in Colorado. It's rugged. It's, I just thought Burly. It's like mountain man kind of vibe. And that I was sold.
Yeah, no, it's a great brand you got there. I love that. So why don't you tell people how they can connect with you, how they can visit, and more importantly, how they can connect with some of that Burly swag that you've got there?
Well, I think the easiest thing to do would be to, if you're on Facebook, for example, which all your people are, so you could go to Burly Brewing and message us, and that will go directly to Lisa, our Director of Operations. Or on our Facebook page is also our phone number. You can call the brewery and ask for Lisa, and she can correspond with you, send you pictures of what we have, and that's amazing. I even appreciate so much that you would do that. I mean, we're just coming out of COVID. We're just kind of rebounding, so it's been a little stressful. We're right in the process of building a deck, which is going to double our occupancy, which is hopefully going to take any stresses in my life away from me. And but yeah, just you mentioning this and people buying merch, that'd be amazing.
That's a no-brainer. I'm definitely going to get that. I'm going to get that outfit right here, and I hope nobody else gets that exact same outfit, because I don't want to bump into you while we're wearing the same thing. That would look very burly.
We have a ton of different.
Anyhow, but listen, George, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. First of all, thank you for sharing that post and, letting people learn more about you and your passion there. It was a great post. And thanks for agreeing to come on and tell your story to everyone. I think they're going to love it. And if you wouldn't mind at some point in the future, if I could have you back, I'd like to talk more about your optometry career. You've done so much in the refractive surgery space, from corporate to all the way through the laser centers. And we have so many mutual friends. I'd like to dig down on that at some point, but we're not going to have time for that tonight. So would you come back?
I would love to come back.
All right. Well, that's great. So have a great night.
Appreciate the
Be safe. I hope you come out of COVID business-wise really strong, and we'll be in touch real soon, okay?
Okay. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
My pleasure.